Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to go over how I got my language assistant visa or Auxiliar de Conversacion visa at the Spanish Consulate in San Francisco, while also touching on some general tips for anyone who's trying to navigate the Auxiliar de Conversacion visa process, regardless of the consulate in the United States. Let's do this. So my visa experience went, I think, as most visa experiences tend to go. It was expensive and stressful. And many times throughout the process, I heavily doubted whether or not this strife and struggle getting a visa would be worth it. But I persevered, and I'm glad I did. So this was my second time getting a Spanish visa. The first time was for study abroad, and I think that might have helped me a little bit, but I honestly think it didn't really help me that much. So regardless of if you've done this already or if it's your first time, I think you'll be able to figure out the process. So I began the visa process a little after I got the confirmation papers that I had gotten the position in June of 2021. And I remember looking at the visa requirements and just being struck by a few things. First was the amount of papers you need. The sheer amount of documents is crazy. You need the application form, the original, and a copy. You need to send your passport and ID as well as copies of both. You need 2 passport-sized photos of yourself. I got mine taken at the local drugstore, Drug Mart. You need your acceptance letter for the program. The program that I am here in Spain with is NALCAP, and I didn't know which of these papers they needed, so I literally just printed them all out and submitted them with the application. You need a police criminal background check certificate, and you can do these 2 ways. You can get them at the state level. The second option is you could get an FBI background check. So then whichever background check you get, the state or the FBI one, then you have to get it apostilled, which is just this word to get like an extra level of verification basically on your document. And to do this, you usually have to get it notarized, then you have to send it to DC if you have the FBI background check. I actually just hired a company to do this for me because I didn't want to deal with the whole process, and they know how to do it. I went with Monument Visa. You can look them up, monumentvisa.com. I'll post the link here. And I can't recommend them highly enough. They had great customer service. They got my background check back to me within like 3 weeks, which was just perfect timing because then I could send all my whole application to the consulate in San Francisco. And it just made the whole background check apostille process a lot smoother. It did cost like $100 or $70, I think, but I think it was worth it. The 5th thing you need is a medical certificate signed on the letterhead of your doctor that claims that you are healthy enough to do this job in Spain. I just got a regular old doctor's appointment and brought this form that I'd printed out, and then they drafted one up on the letterhead and it was good to go. And then lastly, you need proof of an intended flight itinerary to actually get to Spain. I'm not sure why they require this. Maybe it's so that they know you can get to Spain. Maybe it's so that they know that you're not going to stay in Spain, that you have plans to leave. For this, I just literally printed screenshots of flights, and then I said, this is my going to Spain flight and this is my return to the United States flight, and it worked. My second reaction to the visa application process was just utter flabbergastedness at how old and like out of date and confusing the whole process was. For example, in many places the application claimed that I needed an appointment, that I needed to actually come to the consulate and talk with the representatives to get my visa, which was confusing for 2 reasons. One, it was COVID, so it seemed weird that they would be having people fly from like around the country, all of San Francisco. And the second one is that I didn't have to do that for my study abroad visa. So it was just really confusing. And also another thing you need is, I think it's $140 or $160 cash along with your visa. That's just like the fee for them processing it. But anyway, I got all my documents in order and I sent them to the consulate. I just looked up the address online for the San Francisco consulate, sent them all, I labeled everything. Then Rika and I went to Puerto Rico because even if you don't have a passport as a US citizen, you can still go to Puerto Rico. So we went there, had a bunch of fun. But then actually 2 weeks later, I got this email that I had an appointment in San Francisco. So I emailed them asking, hey, do I actually have to go to this appointment, or is it like an automated message from before COVID, or like what's the deal? No one got back to me. I tried calling them, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so I thought that I had to go all the way to San Francisco. I booked tickets. I flew all the way there. And then I was actually in Houston. It was my layover on the way to San Francisco. And I got an email that was a response from an email I'd sent like a week and a half earlier that said, you do not have to come to San Francisco. Currently, there are no in-person appointment requirements to get your visa. Just send us this extra fee and then you'll be fine. So it ended up being cheaper to actually fly all the way to San Francisco instead of just like changing my flight to go back the same day. So I went to San Francisco. I went to a FedEx shop and shipped some money to the Spanish Consulate that was like on the other side of town. And then I went back to the airport and then flew all the way back to Puerto Rico. And then a few weeks later, Rika and I continued exploring Puerto Rico. And then I got a message from my parents that my passport and ID had been successfully shipped home. So then they shipped them all the way to me in Puerto Rico, and then I had my visa. It took up this entire page in my passport. From there, Rika and I flew from Puerto Rico to New York and then to Spain. And that's the story of me getting my visa to become an Auxiliar de Conversacion in Spain. So now I'm going to talk about the general tips that I have for getting a language assistant visa that I hope should be relevant regardless of which Spanish consulate you're actually going through. This is the advice that I wish I would have been told myself before having to go through this process. First, I think everyone should be told that regardless of how difficult the process might seem, it is possible to do it. The second thing I want to say is to obsess over the details. Memorize the paperwork you need for the application. Always use a black pen. Label everything when you're submitting your application in the mail. Make sure everything on the application is neat and tidy. Double and like triple check that you have all the papers and the passport photos and everything in the folder that you actually send to the consulate. Make sure that you have the right consulate address because you don't want to ship all this stuff to just some random building. And then if you have any questions throughout the process, just like email or call the consulate. They never answered my phone calls. They did answer my email once, so you can try that. Also, you can comment here and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible, or find other videos or find other people that you can ask questions to. And my last piece of advice for navigating this whole process is to just find other videos or other people like this one, specifically to your consulate, that can actually help you navigate the exact process that you're going to go through. In general, the more knowledge you have going into this, the more likely you are to come out of it successful. Anyways, that's my video. This visa application process is tough, but it is doable. And as I said, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you thought this video was useful, it helps me out if you hit the like button, and then you can also subscribe to follow Rika and I as we go to 50 countries around the world. Anyways, that's it. Peace out, guys. Take care.